Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last year or two. They are still a relatively new addition to the Swedish beer scene. And I would say that this brewery are best known for their different New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But these days they're also doing a couple of Berliner Weisses, Goses, these big fruity juicy modern sour beers, and a couple of imperial stouts. So they are starting to diversify a little bit. But they are, I would say, a kind of up and coming brewery here in Sweden, and one that would be worth checking out if those styles that I've mentioned are your cup of tea. So yeah, looking forward to trying this one. This is one that I've had for a little while. It's a style that I know they can do very well, and it's also a style that I've been enjoying quite a few of over the last little while. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Karlstad in Värmland County, right on the banks of Vänern here in Sweden, one of the Swedish Great Lakes. And we are going to have a look at another beer from 10 Hands Brewing. So this particular beer is called Butterfiels. It comes in at 6% ABV, and this one is a Berliner Weisse with mango and pineapple added into the brew. Now, this beer was released as part of the local Osmoskalik assortment through Systembolaget, and I can't remember whether this one was released in March or maybe even earlier in February, but it has been sitting in my fridge for a wee while. It's just one, like I said, that I haven't got around to reviewing for you yet. But as I said earlier, we've had a good number of nice Berliner Weisse type beers from 10 Hands in the past, so I do have quite high expectations for this one. But yeah, let's crack on then and see how we go. Very curious about this. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from 10 Hands Brewing in the past, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is that you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very, very regularly, of course, because I live over here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about 10 Hands Brewing. So 10 Hands Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Karlstad on the banks of Vänern in Värmland County, kind of a little bit to the northeast of Gothenburg, Göteborg, up there on the Swedish west coast. And this company was founded by a group of 5 friends. So the 5 friends behind this company are Robert Hedel, Johan Eklund, Fredrik Steen, Göran Larsson and Jan Karlsson, and all of these guys own a 20% share of the company, which was founded officially back in November of 2018. So all of them had a little bit of homebrewing experience, but it's Johan Eklund who is the main brewer. So they released their first beer in March of 2019, which was an IPA called Firstborn, and that year they produced around 20,000 litres of beer in total. So they started releasing their beers through Systembolaget, and in 2020, I believe I reviewed a couple of their first beers that they released actually, and as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced in the region of 60 different kinds of beer. So they have been quite prolific over the last little while, but they seem to specialise mainly in New England hazy IPAs. They've been doing a few more Berliner Weisses recently and 1 or 2 imperial stouts, so I recommend that you guys check out this brewery if those are style brackets that you find yourself interested in. But yeah, over the last little while they've also just been trying to increase their sales and looking to kind of scale up the brewery and things like that. But other than that, there is not much to say about this brewery as of yet. So yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and have a little look at the beer itself then. So, just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this can. So, the artwork of the 10 Hands beers is by a girl called Violetta, who is from who's from Ukraine, of course. And I think we mentioned there was one of the beers that was named after her that we reviewed from these guys a little while ago. But as you can see, this one is a 330ml can. It's one of these kind of tall, thin Red Bull type cans, but we have to say her artwork is pretty cool. I really like Violetta's artwork. But there you can see 10 Hands on the back there. There's Mr. Fingers. As I've said in numerous reviews that I've done for 10 Hands Brewing, it really reminds me of Yevo from the Beast with a Billion Backs, from the Futurama movies that were made. And of course they were turned into season 5 of Futurama, if I remember correctly. They sort of broke them up and made them into episodes and stuff like that. But yeah, as we said earlier, this one is a 6% Berliner Weisse with mango and pineapple added into the brew, and this was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through the Lokalis Moskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden. I believe this cost me maybe about 40 Swedish kroner, so that's about €4, somewhere in the region of like £3.50 sterling, and maybe in the region of like $4.50 American, just for those of you watching over there. But yeah, let's crack this guy open then and see how we get on. Very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Yeah, it's been a good wee while since I've had a nice mango Berliner Weisse, actually. Let me just sugar the last little bit of it up. And there we are. So, this looks pretty nice, I have to say. Yeah, just get that lined up so that my OCD is happy. And there we are. So anyway, as you can see, and as you would expect from a kind of modern Berliner Weisse, especially a kind of tropical fruit one, it's poured a lovely, very bright yellow colour. Before the head disappears, you can see that it's poured with about a one finger frothy, I would say very slightly creamy coloured head. I'll just let you have a little look at the bubbles on that before we open up, but you can see it is fading away pretty rapidly. I'm not sure if you can hear that going, but it's actually quite loud. So yeah, that head is just fading away to be a very, very thin foamy layer. But yeah, it looks good. So there are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass with this one. There are a few little bubbles going up toward the bottom of the glass there. Or up towards the top of the bottom of the head there, I should say, and a few bigger ones just sticking towards the side of the glass there. But yeah, overall it looks very nice. As we said earlier, it's a bright yellow colour, so remember the colour of your beer is affected by 1, the type of malts that you use in the beer. This goes a long way to determining the EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put into the beer will of course affect the colour of it as well. And when it comes to Berliner Weisses like this one, you do have to care about the adjuncts that go in. You know, the berries and the tropical fruit and stuff that you put in these beers plays quite a big role in determining the colour. But yeah, in terms of the haziness to this one, it's not the kind of haziest of Berliner Weisses that we've come across, but remember the haze in these beers depends on the oak content and the wheat content to a degree. The yeast will play a role as well, but obviously it's not, the yeast doesn't play quite as pronounced a role, I think, in the haziness of these beers as it would in like a New England hazy IPA, of course. But yeah, other than that, I don't think there's anything we really need to say about the appearance of this beer. It looks pretty much as you would expect from a kind of modern sour beer. So let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one then and just see how we go. Very, very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. Oh yeah, that's quite nice actually, I have to say. So, first impression of this one is, it's actually, it does have quite a little bit of zip to it, which I do enjoy. And quite a few of these Berliner Weisses are very, very big and creamy and just really sweet. This one does actually have a wee bit of that kind of citricy. It does actually have quite a little bit of that kind of citricy zip to it, which I think goes together very, very well. So, yeah, aroma-wise, I think this is pretty solid. Yeah. So first impression of it is you can get some of the kind of sweeter, you do get some of the really nice sort of sweet kind of smooth, creamy sort of elements of the Berliner Weisse. You do get quite a bit of the smoothness from the tropical fruit. There's a wee bit of the kind of citricy, zippy thing as well, and there's a wee bit of a green component to this one as well. This beer, I should point out though, doesn't have hops in it. It says, at least that's what it says on the ingredients list. But overall, it's quite a nice smelling one. That's just a basic first impression that we've given of it there. But as I've said to you in many videos before, for me these modern sour beers, these Berliner Weisses and Goses and stuff, they are usually quite straightforward and simple in terms of their flavour composition and aroma, but if they're done right, they can be very, very nice beers actually. So yeah, let's take a closer look at this aroma and just break it down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So yeah, backbone of this beer then. For me, there are a few things going on with this one. The backbone of this beer comes across as being just a little touch grainy. It's a little bit like a kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of vibe that I get from this beer, which I do quite enjoy. So you can smell a little bit of that graininess there. On top of that, there's a sort of, how would we say? You do get a little bit of that kind of bread crusty sort of thing. If you think like a hedgehog, a fresh bread roll, a fresh bread hedgehog roll, you're really getting a little bit of that. So Jacob's cream cracker underneath, maybe one or two very, very slightly woody aromas coming out of this, which is quite interesting. But a little bit of bread crust, you can smell a thicker, fluffy white bread, that kind of barley malt bready sort of thing. Then on top of that, there is a big, there's a thicker sort of wheaty, there's a sort of thicker wheaty layer to the beer too, and you'd expect that, of course. It is a Berliner Weiss. You can smell a little bit of the creaminess from the oats in there too, but this beer, it doesn't give you so much of the yogurty sort of thing, the sort of petit filou yogurt type vibe that a number of these more modern sour beers can give you. That's quite interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I do get a little touch of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type vibe out of this beer. But yeah, it's quite. There is quite a little bit of depth to this one in that malt base there, which I do quite enjoy, I have to say. So on the what would we say? I don't think there's anything else to say about that malty yeasty side of things, other than perhaps you do you do get a little touch of a kind of farmhousey vibe out of this one. I'm getting a little bit of that kind of dry, woody, that sort of that kind of dry, woody, crackery, just just kind of farmhousey type note from the, and that's coming out at the very back of the nose. So I suspect it's a little bit of the. It is just a little bit of the yeasty character that's kind of giving you this. So yeah, this beer does really lean towards its yeasty elements a little bit more, which I find quite interesting. So yeah, definitely a few interesting things going on in the malt base with this one actually, and the yeasty side of things. Other than that, I don't think we need to say anything about the malty yeasty part of the beer. So let's go on to the kind of placebo hoppy thing and the fruity side of the beer. So as I mentioned earlier, this beer doesn't have hops in it. Now, this is a big debate amongst sour brewers because, some sour brewers that are very good, like Vault City back home in Scotland, they always put a little bit of hop in their beer, whereas quite a few of the Scandinavian Nordic breweries, I guess we could say, actually don't. And they argue on their side that, you get enough from the fruit and from the malt and things like this that you don't need hops. And of course, what they used to do in the old school Belgian lambic beers and things like this is put old hops in so that the bitterness of the hop didn't take away from the overall sourness of the beer. So that's something really to keep in mind with these styles as well. So it kind of just depends on what you want. The hops will give you a little bit more depth to the flavour, whereas at the same time they can take away a little bit from the overall sourness of the beer. So it just really depends on what you want, to be honest with you. But yeah, for me, this one though does show a little bit of that kind of placebo green component that you get with these beers sometimes. So I am still getting a little bit of that out of this beer for sure. So for me, you do get a little touch of earthiness at the back of the nose. There's a nice bright I do get a little bit of a floral note to it, and there's also a kind of slightly zesty, grassy, almost grassy-like character to this one. And that must just be because of the specific yeast that these guys are using. I do wonder if they have their own yeast strain that they're using for these Berliner Weisses up at 10 Hands, because they always do have a little bit of uniqueness to them, I have to say, and quite often that is what happens. These breweries will get their own yeast from like another beer or something like that, and then they'll kind of cultivate it themselves and keep it going. So yeah, that's definitely worth pointing out. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, so with this beer, you can certainly smell that kind of sharp, zippy, sort of lemony citric thing that you expect of the Berliner Weiss. That is absolutely there. But behind that, you can smell that soft sort of mango-y quality in there. Mango is always a very soft, almost slightly creamy fruit when you put it into these Berliner Weiss styles, and it comes across really very nicely in this particular beer. I really like how this one goes about its business in that regard. Yeah, I think this one. On top of that, you do get a little bit of the kind of juicier pineapple. So the mango is like the soft backbone. The pineapple kind of sits on top of it and just gives you a little bit more juiciness. But then that, as I say, that big lemony citricy thing from the Berliner Weisse yeast really starts to push its way out a little bit more the more that you drink of this one. If I was smelling this beer blind without really knowing what it was, I would probably think there was a bit of passion fruit in there as well, because passion fruit always adds to that smoothness that you get out of these beers. But yeah, this is a really interesting one. The more that I smell of it, the more kind of big and bready and smooth and things that it gets. So yeah, other than that, I don't think we really need to say anything about the overall aroma of this beer. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them, but I think we should have a taste of this one now and see how we go. So yeah, this one is the Butterflies. I have got the name right, yeah, the Butterflies, a mango and pineapple Berliner Weisse, coming in at 6% ABV from 10 Hands Brewing in Karlstad on the banks of Värmland here in Sweden. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. I'm going to say straight away, that is pretty nice. You do get a little bit of that kind of zippy, citricy sharpness out of this beer that you might expect, but I would say that it really mellows out very, very nicely. One thing you always have to consider with sour beers is the impact flavour. So there's a lot of that going on in this one. This one's got a really nice impact flavour, and the whole beer just mellows out in a very, very nice way. Yeah, this beer gets a big thumbs up from me. Actually, it's actually a very. The other thing I would say about it is that it comes across as a very sort of summery beer. So when I think back, they released this beer in like February or something. It's a little bit surprising in a sense, because this would be an ideal summer beer, to be honest with you. We're starting to get some really nice sunshine, the Swedish summer sunshine and things now. So yeah, this beer for me is quite it is really a very, very summery kind of sour beer. So that's definitely worth keeping in mind. It's definitely worth keeping in mind with all of these. In that sense, brain's not working today, guys. A little bit tired when I'm filming this review, but yeah, a very summery type vibe, this beer. On the malty, let's just break this beer down then and describe it in terms of flavour a little bit more. We'll do a proper in-depth tasting as we always do. So yeah, we'll focus on the middle third of the palate first. So I would say that this beer, it is quite similar to what I was describing from the aroma. It's one of these beers where the flavour kind of agrees with the aroma, if that makes sense. So the middle third of your palate then with this beer, the backbone, I would say this beer has a little bit of it certainly has a little bit of how do we say? It's got a little bit of that kind of Jacob's cream cracker backbone to it. On top of that, you've got a little bit of a fresh bread crust. So yeah, it goes together really, really well. So, yeah, I do like this one, as I say. The thing that's interesting is when you take more and more sips of this beer, it does maintain that nice impact flavour that it has. So yeah, as I say, Jacob's cream cracker backbone. On top of that, you get that fresh hedgehog type bread crust, and then on top of that, there is a nice on top of that, you get the kind of you get that fluffy kind of white bread from the barley malt in this one. And on top of that there, you can feel the wheat sort of smoothing the whole beer out. And as I've told you in previous reviews, for me, wheat can do a couple of things, but it either smoothens the beer out or it adds a little bit of a kind of spicy, bitey vibe to the beer. And for me, the wheat in this beer really does a lovely job of smoothing everything out. Now in that middle third of the palate, on top of the wheaty layer, you can get the kind of oaty notes out of this one. And for me, the oats are interesting. Because as I've told you before, when it comes to New England IPAs, the oaty side of the beer is always a good indicator of how fresh your beer is. And it's interesting with this because, the more creamy the oats come across as being, the fresher the beer is, the drier the oats are, the kind of slightly older the beer is. So for me, in the in this beer, you can feel the oats kind of go down that middle trench of your tongue, if you like, and you can feel there is a little bit of creaminess there, but you can feel the oats are starting to dry out, but at the same time, they still give you a good little bit of sweetness, and that's one of the things that I really, really enjoy about this particular beer. So, yeah, I like that about this one. The other thing you'll notice going further into the flavour with this beer, into the aftertaste, there is a little touch of a kind of woody backbone to this one. So yeah, it goes together. It goes together really nicely in that sense. You just feel that coming out the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, I'm also getting just a little touch of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy thing in the very centre of the palate. So that'll be a little bit to do with the alcohol. The other thing I would say about this beer is that it doesn't show the it doesn't show you that kind of petit filou yogurt type vibe that you can get from a number of these Berliner Weisses. So that's also worth pointing out. But yeah, it's interesting to say the least. I do like how this one goes about its business in that perspective. So for the I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate. Let's go on to the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of the palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build-up with this one. The base of that back third of your palate is the Jacob's cream cracker. It feels a little bit drier. On top of that, you can get the bread crust, and again, it's a little bit more grainy and dry. And remember, more bitter, dry flavours come out toward the back of the palate rather than anything else. On top of that, you get a fluffy white bready layer. It is a little bit kind of... it is a little bit sort of grainy and things like that, which I do enjoy. And then on top of that, there's a little bit of a kind of wheaty, bitey. There is a little bit of a kind of wheaty, bitey sort of thing with this one. So yeah, pardon me, it goes together really nicely. On top of all of that, you do have a little bit of a how do we say? On top of that, you'll get some of the kind of yeasty character coming out of the beer, which is also very, very nice. So the yeasty character for me that sits on top of that, the wheat is actually, as I say, very smooth in this beer, which I do like, but on top of that, you get that more dense, white bready yeasty character coming out of it, which I really, really like. And then round the edges of that, there's a little bit of a more, you do get a little touch of a kind of more bread crusty kind of thing. And there are one or two little woody, farmhousey elements in that back third of the palate too. But you can definitely say that on the back third of the palate, the flavour of the beer is a little bit taller. And then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together a little bit more into that middle third of the middle third of the palate, which is nice. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, then, as I explained earlier about this whole placebo side of things, I think we said everything we need about the yeasty and the yeasty and malty side of the beer, on the kind of hoppy side of it, if we can call it that. In the back corners of the palate, you do get a nice little touch of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal. You have got a wee bit of that going on. And then as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more, you do get a little touch of a kind of slightly floral sort of thing. But as I say, this is placebo effect. It's very, very smooth on the sides of your palate, and that's an indicator that there aren't hops in the beer. Round the front curve of the palate, it feels a little bit lighter and kind of grassy, but again, very, very smooth. So you know there's not hops in this one. Let's focus on the front third of the palate and the fruity side of things and the sour side of the beer as well. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. The base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more... the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit smooth and bready. Again, you've got a wee bit of a crackery sort of thing, and you can taste a little bit of the kind of slightly sweet and smooth oats in this one too. But on top of that, you can feel the two adjunct fruits coming out of this one. You've got that kind of soft mango-y backbone, and on top of that, a slightly more juicy pineapple. But the thing is, as we said, this beer does actually have a little bit of a kind of zip to it, if that makes sense. So at the very front, just behind the very front tip of the tongue, you get that lemony zesty type character, which I think goes together very, very well. So I do like that in this beer for sure. Yeah. On top of this one, you do get a little bit of a on top of this one, you do get a little bit of that you can feel a little bit, as I've always said to you, that when you add fruit into the beer as an adjunct, it kind of spreads around the edge of your palate. So I do like how that goes together. But round the round the back of round the sides of the tongue there, you get that nice kind of you can feel the mango notes sort of spread around a little bit. But the thing that lingers into the aftertaste for me is the more juicy aspect of the pineapple. So yeah, that's always an interesting thing. Whenever you add fruit into beer, it suppresses a little bit of the green component of it. But for me, this is a really nice Berliner Weisse, and I've enjoyed this. Let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So overall, I would say that this beer, for me, it's kind of mid-bodied. It's certainly not the thickest of Berliner Weisses that I've come across. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It does have a wee bit of a kind of slightly oily, slick, kind of silky mouthfeel to it at the same time. So it's a really interesting one. But it's a beer, it's really grown on me. This beer really has grown on me, and I feel it kind of sweetens up and smoothens out a little bit the more that you drink of it. In terms of IBUs, I think, technically speaking, this will be a 0 IBU beer, but it's going to have, 5 bitterness units or something like that in it. There will be a few in there. The malt base, as we said, it has a little bit of dryness underneath, but it's very, very smooth, and it starts to build in sweetness the more that you drink of the beer. And on the fruity side of things, for me, you get that really kind of soft, you do get that nice kind of soft mango sort of thing out it, and you've got that kind of more juicy pineapple, and you've just got a little bit of a zippy sourness to this one too. But overall, another very, very solid beer from 10 Hands Brewing, and I've enjoyed this, so I'll need to keep an eye out for another Berliner Weisse from these guys at some point. But I've got a bit of a supply of beer that I need to kind of work my way through over the next little while, actually. So yeah, lots of work going on, I have to say. But pardon me, let's leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this is the Butterfiels, a 6% Berliner Weisse from 10 Hands Brewing in Karlstad, Värmland County, here in Sweden. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from 10 Hands Brewing, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the near future. But in the meantime, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out 10 Hands social media, and I'll see you guys soon. Slange, skål, cheers, see you guys in the next review.